Hi students, my name is Pandika, your social studies educator at Study Room, and today we are going to learn a new topic, that is judiciary. In order to understand this topic, let's directly dive into the chapter. But before understanding this topic and its functioning, let's understand that what is a judiciary. So let's recall what is a judiciary, okay? So basically, judiciary is one of the organs of the government which is responsible for checking whether the laws that have been implemented in the country are being followed by all the citizens or not. Now, as I told you that the laws that are implemented in the country are to be followed by each and every citizen. By each and every citizen, we mean that each and every citizen. It includes president, it includes prime minister, it even includes the wealthiest person of the country. Nobody is above the law, and each and every citizen is to follow the laws. All right. Okay. And as I told you that laws are applied to each and every citizen, no matter the person is the wealthiest person of the country, it is the president or the prime minister, the laws are applied to each and every citizen. Nobody is above the law. And in case anybody violates the law, there is a particular procedure that is to be followed in order to punish the person that violates the law. All right. So there is a particular procedure which is being followed when a person violates the law. So judiciary is basically an organ of the government which is responsible for looking that the rules that are being implemented in the country are being followed properly by all the citizens, including the president, the prime minister, the legislature, the executives, everybody. Okay. All right. Moving forward to the role of judiciary. Okay, so now you might wonder that what is the role of judiciary? By now you have understood that what is a judiciary. Now let's understand that what is the role of judiciary. Okay, one of the major roles of judiciary is to resolve the disputes. Now, what do we mean by disputes? Disputes are basically the conflicts. The conflicts could be between two citizens. It could be between state and a citizen. It could be between center government and state government. So in case that there is a conflict between any of these entities, judiciary is responsible for resolving these conflicts. Okay. The second most role of the judiciary is the judicial review. Now, basically, the judiciary is responsible for checking the laws that have been implemented in the country. Now, what do we mean by checking the laws? It basically ensures that the laws that are implemented in the country are not controversial. They are not favored they are not favored for some part of the society. Does not hinder any group of people or society. It is in the favor it basically is not in the favor of some part of the society. It is not made with the wrong intention. So basically, judiciary is responsible for checking that the laws that have been implemented in the country are not with the wrong intentions and are not controversial. Okay, so the third most role that the judiciary has to play is upholding the law and enforcing the fundamental right. Now let's understand this through an example. So let's say that there is a conflict between two citizens. All right. Now both the citizens can go to the court and file the complaint against each other and fight the case in the court. Now here the judiciary, which is basically comprises of the courts, is responsible for serving them the justice by making a very unbiased decision. Now this is how, by serving justice by making an unbiased decision, the judiciary enforces the fundamental rights and safeguards the fundamental rights of the people. We'll understand all the three roles thoroughly in the other slide through different examples. Okay. So basically, here is a table wherein we'll understand the disputes, which could be between center, state. Dispute could be between two citizens, and through examples. Okay, so let's understand the center state dispute through an example. So as we all know that there are goods and services tax which has been implemented in the country. Now, before this tax was implemented, there were different tax. There were many tax that a citizen had to pay. But what the government did, it implemented such a tax which is known as GST. It implemented such a tax in the country that now the citizens does not have to pay many taxes at the end of the financial year. It only has to pay GST. So GST comprises of all the tax. So in spite of paying many taxes, it just has to pay, the citizen just have to pay GST. Alright, GST comprises of all the tax. The person doesn't need to pay different tax for different things. Now the person only has to pay one tax, which comprises of all the tax. So when this decision was being made, now the center was ready to implement this tax, whereas the state government were not. So this was a kind of conflict that happened. But obviously we know that the decisions of center government prevails. But I'm just giving you an example as to explain you that these kind of conflicts could prevail in the country on such issues. Okay, so the next point is state to state dispute. Now let's understand how which kind of disputes can happen in state. So here is an example of a hill which is on the border of Gujarat and Rajasthan. Okay, so now these two states fight for that hill. Since that hill is on the border of Gujarat and Rajasthan, now Gujarat claims for half of the hill, while Rajasthan says that the entire hill is theirs. It should be included in the state of Rajasthan. Rajasthan claims for the entire hill, while Gujarat says that half of the hill is theirs. Now here there is a conflict between the two states. So this is an example of how disputes can be between the two states. Third is dispute between two citizens. Okay, so for example, there is a landlord and there is a tenant. Okay, so if you don't know, let me tell you that when there is a landlord now, when a new tenant comes in the place of the landlord, an agreement is to be signed. Okay, that this person will, for example, I have a house. Or in a very easy language, I will explain you that I have a house and there is one floor that is vacant in my house, and I want to give it on rent. And one person comes to me and asks that, okay, I want to I want this place on rent, and so, and we come on a decision that, okay, you can live in this house, you will live on this floor for this much rent you will have to pay for each month. Now this is not a verbal discussion. This is basically a discussion. This entire agreement on is made on this particular decision. A paper or an agreement is made wherein it is mentioned that this particular person named so will live in this floor for this much time period, and the monthly rent would be this and this, and the entire details of the person is also written on the agreement. So basically a proper agreement is formed before tenant comes to live in the house. Okay, so such agreement is formed. Now what happens is now that this is an example of the tenant and the landlord. So what happens is one of these tenants denies to pay the rent which is written on the agreement, and says that I won't pay your this rent. Okay, so now here the landlord has the right to file the complaint against that particular tenant, since the agreement was being made and now the tenant is denying to pay the particular rent which is mentioned on the agreement. Now the landlord has the right to complaint against the tenant and go to the court and fight against that particular tenant. So these kind of disputes can happen between two citizens. All right, last one is laws that violate the constitution. Okay, so one of the laws is, since we know that one of the fundamental rights is the right to equality, that each and every person has equal rights, no matter the religion, the caste, and the gender. And if somebody tries to discriminate the citizen on the basis of the religion and the gender and prohibits its fundamental right, does not give equal rights, that means that there is a violation of the constitution. So this is an example of how the laws could violate the constitution. If a person is not given equal rights on the basis of his religion and the gender, there the laws are being violated. The fundamental right is being violated. Okay, so here comes the next topic, which is independent judiciary. Okay, let's understand this. What is an independent judiciary? As we know that there are three organs of the government. There is legislature who make laws, there is executive who is responsible for executing those laws, and there is judiciary who is responsible for checking that the laws that have been implemented in the country are being followed by all the citizens properly or not. So these are three organs of the government, and all the three organs are different entities. Neither of these organs interfere in each other's responsibilities and work. So this makes each of the organs independent of each other. They're independent of each other because it does not interfere in each other's responsibilities and works. So this makes each organ independent. And thus, this is quite evident that if neither of these organs interfere in each other's responsibility, this makes judiciary an independent organ, and the legislature, the executive, an independent organ. So this is what we mean by independent judiciary, that nobody, neither of the organ, the legislature, the executive, and nor the government could have the right to interfere in the responsibility in the work ethics of the judiciary. Nobody is allowed to interfere in the works of judiciary, nor the legislature, neither the executive, not even the government. Nobody can interfere in the work of judiciary. There are three organs which are very different. All the three organs have different responsibilities, different works to do. And so neither of the organs interfere into each other's work, not even the government interfere in this work, and this makes each of the organs independent, and thus it is quite evident to say that this makes judiciary independent. Also, what makes judiciary independent also, that since we know that judiciary comprises of courts, right? Supreme Court, High Court, District Court, and subordinate courts. So the courts have some judges, and the judges are, when the judges are appointed, they are appointed with the very least interference from the other organs of the government. Okay. Also, there is one more point that makes it quite evident that judiciary is independent, which is that the courts that consist in this judiciary are not under the government. They are very different entity, and the government is also not allowed to interfere in the work of the judiciary. Judiciary is independent of its work, and neither of the other organs of the government nor the government can interfere in the work of the judiciary. This makes judiciary independent of its own. All right. Hope you understood that what makes judiciary independent. Now, I have been talking in the entire video that judiciary consists of some courts, right? And I have also told you that it consists of Supreme Courts, High Courts, District Courts, and Subordinate Court. Now, let's understand all the working of all these courts. So, Supreme Court is the highest level of the court. That means the Supreme Court is for the center government, is for the entire country, and so Supreme Court is the court for the entire country, okay, and there is only one Supreme Court which is established in Delhi. So the second one comes High Court. So High Court is basically, these are the courts for the state. So there are different High Courts in different states. So basically these High Courts are for the states. There are different High Courts for different states. Coming to district courts, okay, so basically district courts are for the districts. That means for the rural areas, all right. And coming towards the subordinate court, so subordinate courts are the type of district courts only. Basically, there are different types of district courts for the civil cases, for the criminal cases. Now, you might wonder that what are civil cases, what are criminal cases. We'll cover these topics in the other slides. As of now, let's just understand that there are different types of district courts, and which are the civil courts, which are criminal courts, and such courts are known as subordinate courts. There are different types of district courts, like civil courts and criminal courts, and this is known as subordinate courts. Okay, moving forward. Okay, so appellate system. This is very interesting. Okay, so basically, the system is an integrated. The system says that judicial system is an integrated system. So let's understand this through an example. That what do we mean by the appellate system? So, for example, that the two citizens comes into a fight. Okay, so the two citizens have a conflict, and both of them are in a conflict. So each of them files a complaint against each other, all right, and both of them goes to the court and fight against each other to further justice, all right. And so in this case, for example, let's assume that both of the citizens went to the High Court, okay, and the judge made a decision which did not satisfy one of the citizens. So now this is a possibility. There is a possibility that that citizen who is not satisfied by the decision of the judge can go to the Supreme Court also. Now the person went to the Supreme Court, and now the judge takes a decision which makes that citizen satisfied. So here we could see that if a person is not satisfied by the decision of the judge in High Court, it could go to Supreme Court also. Now, for example, let's say that the person would have first gone into district court. There, the person wouldn't have been satisfied by the decision. So, there is a possibility that could happen that that person could go into the high court also and file the complaint. And so, the judge there makes a decision, and again, he's unsatisfied by the decision of the court, by the judge. Now, there is a possibility that he could again go to the Supreme Court. So, this system is basically known as an appellate system, wherein the people, the citizens, have the power to go until Supreme Court if in case that they feel that their decision is biased and they're not happy with the decision made by the court. So they can go up to Supreme Court. They can go up to Supreme Court, but Supreme Court is the highest court. So whatever the Supreme Court takes a decision, it has to be followed. It has to be followed by the decision, followed by the citizens. So, but as we understood that if there is a if there is a conflict, if there is a fight, and that there are two citizens who are fighting in the local court and the district court, and one of the citizens did not get satisfied by the decision that was made by the judge. Now that particular person can go to the high court to get justice. Okay. And the same happened in the high court also. In the high court also, he could not get satisfied by the decision made by the judge. Now again, he could go to the Supreme Court with the same complaint. But now, whatever the decision that the Supreme Court will take, the person will have to accept that particular decision, because the Supreme Court is the highest court. It is the highest court of justice. So this is basically known as appellate system, wherein if the person is not satisfied by the decision in the local court and the district court, can go to the high court. If it is not satisfied in the high court, they can go up to Supreme Court also. All right. So this is basically known as an appellate system. So in our appellate system, a person can appeal to a higher court if they believe that the judgment passed by the lower court is not just. So in case that you're not satisfied by the decision made in the local court, you can go to the high court. In case that you are still not satisfied, you can still go to the Supreme Court. But Supreme Court is the highest court of justice. Moving forward. Okay, so let me explain this appellate system through an example of Sudha Goyal. So what happened once that Sudha Goyal, a lady, died in 1980 due to burns. So the case was like she burnt herself, all right, and she died due to those burns. Now the case over here is that after she was died, her family, the family of Sudha Goyal, the mother of Sudha Goyal, and the father of Sudha Goyal, complained against his husband and mother-in-law. They claimed that her mother-in-law and her husband had burnt her. She herself not burnt her, or she hasn't been accidentally been burnt, but she has been burned by her mother-in-law and has been burned by her husband. So her family, Sudha Goyal's family, claimed this against Sudha Goyal's mother-in-law and husband. They stated that they used to torture Sudha Goyal because of their dowry and all that stuff. They used to torture her, and so they have burnt her. They have burnt Sudha Goyal. Sudha Goyal has not been accidentally burnt. And so there was a case that was filed against her mother-in-law and husband. Now what happened? Let's understand. So first, when this case was filed against the Sudha Goyal's mother-in-law and husband Lakshman, the case went to the trial court, the district court, and a decision was made that her husband Lakshman and mother-in-law will be sentenced to death. But her husband and mother-in-law were not satisfied with the decision, so they went to high court. Right, in the high court, the decision was made that they won't be sentenced to death, and so they were acquitted. Acquitted means that they were free. They were not punished. They were free. They were not being sentenced to death. The decision in the Supreme Court was vice versa. It was completely the opposite. They were not, the mother-in-law of Sudha Goyal and the husband Lakshman was not being found guilty. They were completely free. They were not being sentenced to death, and so the decision was different in High Court. But there was the husband Lakshman and the mother-in-law did not go to Supreme Court, since they got justice in the High Court that they were not being sentenced to death, and they were claimed that they are free now. They did not go to Supreme Court, and neither the family of Sudha Goyal did go to Supreme Court. But there was a new element over here, that the Indian Federation of the Women Lawyers, basically this is an organization made by the lawyers of the women lawyers of India. This is an organization made by the women lawyers. So basically what happened now, this federation of the women lawyers appealed to the Supreme Court against the husband of Sudha Goyal, and they appealed to the Supreme Court. And what happened? The Supreme Court took the decision and accused the husband of Sudha Goyal and the mother-in-law to the prison. So basically, this is what I'm trying to explain you in the appellate system, that in case that a citizen or a family does not feel that they got justice in district court, they could go to the High Court. In case that does not feel that they got justice in the High Court, they could go to the Supreme Court. So these are the ways through which, if you does not feel that you got the satisfied decision that you wanted, you can go to the next level of the court. But Supreme Court is the highest level of the court that you can go up to. All right, moving forward. Okay, so here we are going to understand about the different branches of the legal system, as I told you in the previous slides, as I told you about the criminal law and the civil law. If you remember, I use these words criminal law and civil law in the subordinate courts, wherein I told you that there are different types of district courts, that are civil courts and criminal courts. So now we are going to understand that how these courts are being used, since we know that there are two types of branches of legal system. One is criminal law and the other is civil law. Okay, so let's understand the difference between the two of them. Basically, there is a criminal law and there is a civil law. Now, criminal law deals with conduct or acts that the law defines as offenses, and civil law deals with any harm or injury to the rights of the individuals. Now, let's understand. Basically, under criminal laws, law acts like murder, comes under criminal laws. But in civil laws, acts like, as we understood as we discussed in the previous slides, that there was a conflict between the landlord and the tenant. So these kinds of conflicts comes under civil law, or the divorce cases comes under civil law, or the theft cases comes under civil law. While under criminal law, there are cases like murder, there are cases like kidnapping, okay, where there is a crime that has happened, like rape cases, like murder cases. All such kind of cases comes under the criminal law, while the cases which includes like divorce cases, the theft cases, comes under the civil law. Alright, the second most point tells that begins with the lodging of the first information report with the police. What does this mean? Now, as I told you that under the criminal law, there are cases like murder cases or rape cases or kidnapping cases. So once this case has happened, once, for example, let's assume there is a murder case in the society. Now, once the murder has happened, the family, the respective family in which the murder has happened, will go to the police station. We all know that that family will go to the police station and will file the FIR. Now, what is FIR? FIR is basically the first information report. This is basically the first time that you're reporting to the police as to what happened, when happened, how happened, right? So this is the first time information that you're giving to the police station. This is a very raw and first time, the information that you're giving the very first time to the police station. So this is known as the first information report, which is known as FIR. So the very first time that you realize that there is a murder case in your family, or there is a murder that has happened in the family, you will instantly go to the police station and you will file the FIR, which is known as the first information report, which means that the very first time that you give any kind of information to the police, which comprises of how the when the murder happened, when did you come to realize that the murder has happened. So this kind of information consists in FIR, which you give to the police station once you realize that there is a murder that has happened in your locality or in your family or so on and so forth. So this is the first information report that you give to the police station. Okay. Now, in contrary to this, in the civil law, the second point says that a petition has to be filed before the relevant court by the affected party only. Now, what does this mean? Now, we understood that in the criminal law, which consists of murder cases or the rape cases, etc., and if such cases happens, the person will go to the police station and file the FIR. But what if there is a divorce case? What if there is a conflict between two citizens, as we discussed in the case of the landlord and the tenant? What happens in that case? Do we have to go and file the FIR? No. In case that there is a conflict, you don't have to go to the police station and file an FIR. That doesn't happen. Then what do you have to do? Let's understand. So let's understand this through an example. So before explaining you the example, let me just tell you that, like fundamental rights, we do have some fundamental rights, right? So like fundamental rights, we also do have some consumer rights. Okay, we also do have some consumer rights. Like fundamental rights, we also have some consumer rights, which we will study in the other chapters, right? So as of now, let's just understand like fundamental rights. We also do have some consumer rights. Now let's understand the example. Okay, so there is a consumer and there is a shopkeeper. So this consumer goes to the shop and buys a product. Now when he gets back to the home, he looks at the product and he realizes that the product is broken from one side. Now he gets back to the shop and asks the shopkeeper to exchange the product, since he checked that the product is broken, and so he asked the shopkeeper to exchange the product. Now the shopkeeper denies to do so. Here the consumer right of the consumer is being violated. Okay, one of the consumer right is that uh, one of the consumer right of the consumer is that in case the product is broken, the shopkeeper will have to exchange the product, okay, with the terms and condition that the bill is made when the product is bought. So let's assume that the bill was made while the product was being bought, and the consumer, when reached home, realized that the product was broken. So he gets back to the shop and asks the shopkeeper to exchange the product, while the shopkeeper denies to do so. Now here the consumer right of the consumer is being violated. Now here the consumer has the right to go to the court, to the consumer court, and fight for justice. He has the right to go and complain against the shopkeeper that this and this shopkeeper has violated his consumer right. He is denying to exchange his broken product, and so he can complain about the shopkeeper, and so a full-fledged case can be fought in the court between those two citizens, that is the consumer and the shopkeeper. The consumer who is willing to get his product exchanged because the product was broken, while the shopkeeper who denies to exchange the product. Now the case will be fought between these two entities, that is the consumer and the shopkeeper, and the consumer court. So this happens when there is conflict between two citizens. One of the citizens can file the can file the petition against the other citizen in the respective court. For example, here the consumer right was being violated, so the consumer will file the petition in the consumer court, right? So here, this was just an example to explain you that in case that there's a conflict between two citizens, so one of the citizens can file the petition against the other citizen in the respective courts, okay, and ask for the justice. So, okay, let's go to the third most point. If found guilty, the accused can be sent to jail and also fined. Now we understood through an example that what happens when a criminal case is to be filed in the police station, right? In case that there's a murder case, what does the family do? When it goes to the police station, files the FIR, and so on and so forth. Now, what happens after that? As you all know, the police starts his investigation, start finding the evidence, and so on and so forth. And let's assume that the murderer is caught. Now, what will happen now? The murderer will be punished and sent to the jail. Maybe it could be the punishment of sentence to death also. But let's assume that the murderer or the kidnapper is now caught and is sent to jail. Okay, this will be the punishment. But in case of a civil law, wherein we understood that there is a fight between the consumer and the shopkeeper, and both of them are fighting in the court for the justice, what happens in their case? The shopkeeper will not be sent to the jail. This is not going to happen, right? This is not going to happen. The judge will make a decision that the shopkeeper will have to follow or the consumer will have to follow. Now let's assume that the judge makes a decision that the shopkeeper will have to exchange the product, and the shopkeeper will have to follow the judgment made by the judge, and so will have to exchange the product. Here the judge made a relief that the consumer asked for. This is what we mean by the third point, which is mentioned in the slide, which says that the court gives the specific relief asked for. The relief that the consumer was asking here was to get his product exchanged, and after fighting the entire case, the judge made a decision that the shopkeeper will have to get the product exchange. So here it is quite evident that the court gives the specific relief asked for. This is what we mean by the third point, that after a particular case has been fought, okay, the judge makes a decision that either of the citizens have to follow, whatever the decision that the judge makes, either of the citizens have to follow it, and so basically the relief that the other person is asking for, he gets it. As we understood in the case of the consumer, the relief that he was asking for was that he wanted his product to be exchanged. Basically, that was the relief that he was asking for, na? That he wants his product to get exchanged. This was the relief that the consumer was asking. His relief was that he wanted his product to get exchanged, and the shopkeeper was denying it. After fighting the entire case, the judge made a decision that the shopkeeper will have to get the product exchanged. He will have to give him the another product, and so here the consumer got his relief that he was asking for. So this is how justice is being served in the civil law. And in the criminal law, in the police station, the police officers basically, uh, through the entire process of investigation and all that, finds the murderer or the kidnapper and punishes them by either getting them into the jail or punishing them or giving them the sentence to death, etc., etc. Okay, so I hope we understood. All right. Okay, so there are two description cases wherein the first one says that a group of girls are persistently harassed by a group of boys while walking to school, and we need to tell that which of this is it a civil law or is it a criminal law. So basically, there are a group of girls which are being harassed. So this is a criminal law, and the procedure will be the same that I explained you, that that group of girls will go to the police station, will file an FIR against those a group of boys, and the police will find those group of boys, will punish against that FIR, will punish the boys against that FIR. The second point, the second description says that a tenant who is being forced to move out files a case in court against the landlord. All right, as we discussed the kind of a similar case before also, wherein there was a conflict between the tenant and the landlord, wherein the tenant was not giving the rent to the landlord, and so the landlord filed the petition against the tenant in the court. So here in this case, there is a little change wherein the tenant is being forced to move out of the house by the landlord, and herein the tenant files the complaint, the files a petition against the landlord in the court. This is quite evident that this is a civil law, and the procedure will be that the tenant will file the petition against the landlord in the respective court. It could be high court, it could be district court. So this tenant will file the petition against the landlord in the district court. It could be in the high court also, and so the judge will make the judgment or the decision for the both of them, and whatever the decision will be, the both of the citizens, the landlord and the tenant, will have to follow it. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the next question that you might wonder, that does everyone have access to the courts? By now we have been studying there are different kinds of courts, what is a court, and so. But does we even know that is it accessible to everyone or not? Now the very simple answer that I would like to give you is that it is open to everyone. Everyone can come in the court and ask for justice, right? Even the poor, the most richest, the most poorest, everybody has access. Everybody does not have the access. Everybody has the right to go to the court and ask for justice. But here the question is, does everybody have the access? No, everybody does not have the access. Everybody has the right to go. For everybody, the courts are open. Everybody can go. Everybody is allowed to go, but not everybody can access. Now, the difference here is, basically, we all know that there are different kinds of people in India, right? There are rich people, and there are poor people, and we all know that court cases are not very simple. They go long for years and years and years, and sometimes they are so time consuming. They are so money heavy that you need a lot of money in order to fight a case in the court. It requires a lot of time, a lot of money, and so the poor people cannot afford to fight a case in the court, since it requires a lot of money, it requires a lot of time, and more than time, it requires a lot of money, a lot of paperwork. For the paperwork, one needs to be very educated and smart, and poor people have lack of education, they have lack of approach, and so it is not quite possible for them to go to the court to fight the case for so long, spend so much money. They do not even have the money to eat 3 times of food. So how can they spend so much money on fighting for a case? Now let me give you an example to explain you this better. Okay, so we all know that there are farmers who are so poor that they get wages on a daily basis. So they get the daily wages for whatever work that they're doing in a day. They get wages at the end of the day. Now we all know that they get daily wages. They have the money to spend in that particular day. They don't even have the money to eat the three times the meal for three times in a day. Do you really think that after all that they do have the money to spend on fighting the cases? After working for the entire day, they get the money to spend and survive for that particular day, to spend on the meals for that particular day. Can they afford to spend all that time in the court and not earn the money, since they are working on a very daily basis? They are working this particular day, they're getting the daily wages. Do you really think that they can spend the entire day in the court and fight for the case and not earn money to survive? So this is very impractical for the poor people who do not have time. They have to work all day and night to earn their wages and to survive. They do not have the money to afford to go to these big courts where they have to spend a lot of money. So this is very impractical for the poor people to fight the cases and as we know that the cases go long for so many years, it is quite evident that the poor people do not even have the time. They do not even have the money to afford to fight such cases. So this is now quite evident that the courts are open to everyone. The poorest person, the richest person, both of them have the right to go into the court, have the right to file the petition against someone and fight for the justice. It is allowed to everyone to fight for their justice in the court. But is it even accessible? No, the answer is no. It is not accessible to the poor people. It is very, very difficult for them to file the petition, to fight the case, since it is very time consuming, it is very money heavy, it requires a lot of pen and paper work, which requires a lot of education and smartness. And we know that poor people lacks a lot of education. They're not educated. Sometimes they're even, made fooled. They're fooled by a lot of more powerful group of people. We all know that sometimes poor people, even though they try to file the petition against someone, they are often fooled by them, since they are more powerful than them, they have more money than them. And so the poor people does not even try to file the petition, since they do not even have the money to do so. They are not powerful. They're very less powerful. They're not even powerful. And so there are chances there this happens in the country, that the more powerful group of people dominates them, fools them in case that they try to file the petition. So therefore we could say that this is not accessible. The courts are not accessible to everyone. They're open to everyone. Everyone can go and file the petition, but it is not accessible to everyone. All right. Okay. So as we understood that the courts are not accessible to everyone due to some reasons, we should now understand that, is there something that the government has done to make it accessible to everyone? Yeah, the government has basically done one thing, that is the introduction of public interest litigation. Now, what does it mean? Basically, so what does this mean? So basically, it is very simple. As we discussed in the previous slide, wherein I told you that there is a possibility that the more powerful group can dominate the poor people who tries to file the petition. In case that they can be dominated by the powerful groups, right? So in this case, where the poor people cannot file the petition against their problem, the powerful groups sometimes dominate them. Sometimes it's the matter of money. Sometimes it's the matter of, the lack of education and so on and so forth. So what is the solution to it? So for example, that there is a case wherein the farmers are being dominated by the powerful group and they're facing a problem, okay? And they're facing a problem. So any other individual apart from the farmers and that powerful group who are creating the problem for the farmers, apart from the both of them, the other entity, some other individual or some other organization can file the petition, can file this public interest litigation in the favor of those farmers. Now let's assume that there are some farmers and there is a particular powerful group, and those farmers are having some problem due to that particular group, and that group, let's assume, is a powerful group. Okay, so basically let's say that there is a farm, there is a land behind the company, a company, and a lot of waste products gets into their land, and the farmers are having a lot of problem because a lot of waste products are coming into their land and their crops are not growing because of that. Now there is a problem that the farmers are facing here, right? Now what the farmers can do, since I told you that there are a lot of problems for the farmers to go and access the court, here the farmers are facing a lot of problems. Now, some other individual, apart from the farmer and that company, can file the public interest litigation in the favor of the farmers to the Supreme Court. They can file that so and so problem is being faced by the farmers, and so we need a solution for this. The company isn't listening to the farmers, they're dominating the farmers, and the farmers, as we know, cannot access the courts. And so, this is a public interest litigation that I am writing in favor of the farmers so that a solution is found for them. Okay, so this could be written by some other third entity also, by some other individual or some other organization, or by the farmers also to the Supreme Court. Now, this public interest litigation is not a litigation which is only done when you are when physically when you are in the court. No, you can just write a letter to the parliament, you can just write the letter to the court, and regarding the problem that you're facing, and you can send that letter, and particular letter that have all the problems, to the court. The court will read the letter and will find the solution to the problem. This is the way which is found by the government to solve the problem that has been faced by the poor people, that they're not able to access the court. So public interest litigation is basically a kind of a solution wherein any other individual apart from the two main parties or the party who is facing the problem can also write a particular letter, which is known as a public interest litigation, which consists of all the problems that they are facing, and can send that particular letter to the court, right? And that court will read the letter, will consider the problems, and will find a solution regarding that problem. So here the poor people will not have to go to the court and file the petition and has to go through all the money, resources, and all that procedure. They just will have to write a letter to the court considering regarding their problem. The court will consider their problem and find a solution to it. And even the farmers, if they don't want to write, the other third party can also write for them in on the behalf of them. So this is what public interest litigation is. Okay, in the name also you can say that public interest litigation means any litigation, any kind of litigation which is in the interest of the public. Okay, which is in the interest of the public, because here, as we saw, that the farmers were being facing some problem because of the waste products that were coming from the factory, the company. Let's not say the company, let's say that there was a factory and a lot of waste products was coming to the land, and so the farmers was facing the problem. So here, that problems that the farmers were facing was basically a public issue, right? So the third party who wrote the public interest litigation was writing on behalf of the farmer on a public interest. Okay, that the farmers were basically, the problems that the third individual mentioned on the letter that was sent to the court was in public interest, right? Because the farmers are the public, and they were facing a problem. So the letter that was written was in the public interest, right? I hope you understand what I'm trying to say over here is that public interest litigation is basically a letter which could be written by anyone, the person who is facing the problem, or the third entity who can write on the behalf of the person who is facing the problem. And that problem should be basically faced by the public. It should be in the interest of the public, right? It should be faced by the public, the citizens of the country, and it should be valid. It shouldn't be fake. It should be valid. It should be sent to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will consider the problem and find a solution for the respective problem. Okay. This brings us to the end of this video. We'll connect in the next video. By then, thank you so much for joining me on Study Room.